once again, it is time for that portion of the program in which executive producer Bradley Herring and I break down the news events of the past week, or as we call it, breaking the news. Brad, what's up?
All right, so first off, I want to make clear that we're recording this on Wednesday, which is a little bit earlier than our usual, but don't fear. We have plenty of news to get to so far. Donald Trump just wrapped up his first full week as president-elect, and needless to say, it was a little bit rocky. Infighting, power plays, and firings galore. Perhaps the most interesting is the marginalization of New Jersey Governor Christie, which NBC News described as Stalin-esque. Not only Christie, but all those loyal to him. And why? From the New York Times, it may be because Christie, as federal prosecutor, had sent the father of Jared Kushner, Ivanka's husband, to jail. Those Christie loyalists include Representative Mike Rogers of Michigan and lobbyist Matthew Friedman. Vice President-elect Mike Pence replaced Christie as head of the transition team. Another potential reason for Representative Rogers' ouster: he oversaw an investigation into Benghazi that found the Obama administration had not intentionally misled the public, and I guess that angered the Trump people.
That is a firing offense right there. But the whole thing about Christie is just when you think about it, as so many things will be about this administration, it's ironically horrifying. I mean, not because I have anything but schadenfreude for the downfall of Chris Christie, but because being potentially corrupt, having both his or two of his top aides sentenced to prison, having both those aides say that he lied to the public, that he knew all about a bridge closing, paralyzing the biggest and most important bridge in the Northern Hemisphere, solely as payback to a political enemy, the mayor of Fort Lee, New Jersey. None of this was enough to get them to consider perhaps downgrading Chris Christie's role in the Trump team, but do his job as a prosecutor and prosecute a corrupt person who happens to be related to Trump's son-in-law means that you're put in the gulag as far as these guys are concerned. And not only that, happening to find that there were no legal offenses or wrongdoing involved in Benghazi, that's another reason why you might be out. So in other words, they will get rid of the right people for the wrong people, or the wrong people for the wrong reason, or whatever. But it's the kind of nightmare we're going to be facing for years to come.
Yeah, and adding to that, another source of discord is the role of Steve Bannon, the former chief of Breitbart News, and behind the scenes, some would say de facto campaign manager for Trump's campaign. Bannon was tapped this week to be chief strategist for the Trump White House, kind of Karl Rove type position. Under Bannon's leadership, Breitbart News transformed into a home for white nationalists, racists, and anti-Semites, many of whom have praised Bannon's selection. The move allies Trump's administration even closer to the so-called alt-right, which many had hoped was just an electoral alliance. Paul Ryan and almost all Republicans refused to speak out about Bannon. Obama himself refused to condemn the hire by name, but in his overseas trip to Greece, he spoke kind of obliquely about it. 169 House Democrats have called for Bannon's ouster.
So here we have Steve Bannon, who uses code words that are widely considered signals for racism. We have Steve Bannon, and believe me, we'll talk about this more on this show, but we have Steve Bannon, who is to our alt-right, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, at best, what a piece of rotting meat is to cockroaches, which is if you leave them on the counter long enough, they'll come by the hundreds and start swarming. We have Steve Bannon, who said that one of the problems with the Silicon Valley is that there were too many Asian CEOs. You have Steve Bannon, who the head of the American Nazi Party's response to his appointment was, maybe the Donald is for real. We could go on, but the fact is that you have a guy whose appointment is celebrated by the KKK and the American Nazi Party. 169 Democrats are willing to go on record, should be 100% of them, but are willing to go on record as opposing this appointment. Paul Ryan, instead, on the day that Bannon and Reince Priebus were appointed, merely said, "I'm so happy for my friend Reince. I'm so proud," as if A, serving for the Trump administration is something to be proud of, and B, as if it wasn't worthy of mention, the kind of person that the leader of his party just appointed. It is a profile in cowardice.
Yeah, and speaking of the kind of hatred that Bannon and people like him stir up, hundreds of hate crimes have been reported since the election of Donald Trump. The Southern Poverty Law Center has estimated the number to be over 300. Just in our backyard here in D.C. in Silver Spring, Maryland, an Episcopal church that features Spanish language services found, quote, "Trump's America whites only" scrawled on its property. Colored and white only signs have been put on drinking fountains, including in Jacksonville, Florida. Numerous swastikas have been found scrawled across the country, many with pro-Trump messages. Donald Trump on CBS responded to the events, saying he was saddened, then ordering his supporters to, quote, "stop it."
Now, I think I've got my chronology right. He said, "Stop it" on Sunday. I think he recorded it a day early.
2 days earlier.
2 days earlier. And then he appointed Steve Bannon to the White House. So no wonder that his supporters don't necessarily think he's serious about
Yeah, and it is kind of awful that CBS, while all these attacks are going on across the country, held on to audio of Donald Trump saying "stop it" for 2 days when it possibly could have helped.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. But, look, if we want to start now expecting our press to be responsible, if they weren't responsible when this guy was considered a sideshow and a diversion, why would they be responsible when he's going to be the most powerful person in the country?
Yeah, and on the other side, protests have been rising against Trump, many with the message of, quote, "not my president." These included a massive walkout from D.C. public schools, with thousands marching for miles and ending in front of the new Trump Hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. They joined the thousands that have protested across the country from New York to L.A.
Well, I'm all for him. It's interesting because I passed by one of the protests the other day, and it was the first I'd heard the phrase "not my president," and part of me said, well, you know what, maybe we'd get more activated if we admitted the horrible fact that the guy is our president. But I think they're right. Morally speaking, he doesn't speak for me. Mm-hmm. He doesn't speak for the majority of voters who voted against him. He doesn't speak for the legitimacy, what the United States Constitution imagined for the presidency. Maybe he'll rise to the job. But you know what? The other thing and maybe I'll do a monologue about this, I don't know. But, people are saying, Obama and everybody are saying, I want him to succeed. Well, based on what he wants to do, I don't want him to succeed.
Yeah, part of the reason why these protesters claim that Trump isn't legitimate is because of the nature of his victory. He won a majority of the electors in the regressive, outdated system we use to elect the president. He did not win the popular vote. By the time all votes are counted, it appears he will have 2 million fewer votes than Clinton. And at one time, Trump, in fact, hated the system. When it appeared that Obama would win the Electoral College but not the popular vote in 2012, he basically lost his mind on Twitter, calling it a, quote, "disaster for democracy," and urging a march on Washington, D.C. Now, of course, he's changed his tune, claiming the system is, quote, "actually genius," because it brings smaller states into play. And it's worth noting that when all votes were counted, Obama did actually win the popular vote, too, in 2012.
Right. I mean, the only two presidents in modern history who have taken office without winning the popular vote are Donald Trump and George W. Bush.
He hasn't taken office yet.
That is true,
There's
but
still space.
who have been declared the winner, I should say. But, all of a sudden it's genius. Look, I think the Electoral College needs to be changed. But I've got to say, as far as lines of protest against Trump, in my personal opinion, it's not the best. Okay? We knew the rules going in. We didn't object to them going in. We got to be consistent. And if our position now is we oppose the Electoral College, let's just oppose the Electoral College. But, Trump tweeted out, well, if I had known that people wanted him, if the system had been that you get more popular votes and you win, I would have stayed in New York and California and I would have gotten 10 million more votes. So I don't know if it's the strongest hill to try to fight on, but for this election, but I certainly think it's a broken system. Look, so much about our system is broken. Yeah. It's run by money. It's not democratic. You want something really undemocratic, look at the Senate.
Oh, yeah. All right, let's get off the presidential to a certain extent. The COP22, or Conference of the Parties, is being held in Marrakesh, Morocco this week. This is the annual United Nations Climate Change Summit, and of course, the specter of a Donald Trump presidency looms over the proceedings. The Obama administration has unveiled a slew of last-minute regulations and will likely introduce more before Trump is sworn in. Trump has selected Myron Ebell, I guess you pronounce it like that, to head the Environmental Protection Agency. And beyond not believing in climate change, Ebell has some other intriguing views. His group at Competitive Enterprise Institute believes that pesticides like atrazine aren't actually bad for people, despite the fact that they apparently change the sex of various amphibious life forms. Some were relatively hopeful at the conference. Lawrence Toubiana, the French climate change envoy, who played a key role in brokering the Paris deal, said the agreement is not dependent on the U.S. Many countries have domestic rationale for wanting to reduce their emissions.
Well, good for Lawrence Toubiana, but I got to say, and I hope he's right, but I got to say, I think it's pretty bad for the planet that we've got these people in charge. I didn't realize Abel, I know he's been talked about as a candidate. I didn't know if he had been, Trump had actually announced his appointment. That's pretty bad news.
I think they're all just floated at this point. It's,
okay.
Can't do anything until you're actually sworn in.
Yeah, I guess you could say I intend to pick whatever, but.
All right. One of the few victories from last Tuesday came out of North Carolina, where voters elected a liberal majority to the state's Supreme Court. Governor Pat McCrory looks to be on the way out as he trails his Democratic opponent, Roy Cooper, though he has yet to concede. The North Carolina GOP has a plan to keep the court conservative, though. The plan is to add 2 seats to the court and allow the lame duck governor to fill those seats, so packing the court, a trick similar to the attempt by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who faced opposition to his New Deal plans. Republicans hold a supermajority in the state legislature beginning in 2017, meaning they can override the Democratic governor's vetoes. So this would remove the final check on the legislative branch.
Boy, Republicans hate democracy.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about that for the moment.
Yeah. All right, the race for the DNC chair is heating up. We talked a little bit about it last week. It's going to be quite some time before the final vote is cast. I think it's actually February, so there's a lot of posturing going on right now. The field has seemingly narrowed to the one we previously mentioned, pharma lobbyist Howard Dean, and new entrant and former guest of the show, Elise Hogue, president of NARAL Pro-Choice America. Martin O'Malley has dropped out, so did R.T. Ryback, who threw his support to the favorite, which remains Keith Ellison, chair of the Progressive Caucus and representative from Minnesota. He is also the first Muslim in Congress, and unsavory elements are using that against him. Think Progress reported on the growing smear campaign. Ellison has been accused of being a member of the Nation of Islam, which he denies. John Podhoretz in Commentary magazine used him as a counterpoint to Steve Bannon, drawing a false equivalence between the white nationalist and Ellison. Ellison has the support of outgoing Minority Leader Harry Reid, likely incoming leader Chuck Schumer, and near nominee Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, I saw that commentary from John Podhoretz arguing that somehow Ellison was preaching hate. Ellison, multiple-time guest on this program. On the one hand, if anybody knows about preaching hate, it's John Podhoretz, but in this case, it's such an offensive accusation. So is the accusation that Ellison is a member of the Nation of Islam. I mean, who knows what he was as a kid, but he is a mainstream Muslim, and he's chair of the caucus. He's got huge support behind him. He's a very reasonable, agreeable guy, supports marriage equality, supports reproductive rights. He has, as opposed to the sort of extremist, out-of-touch, anti-freedom people in the Trump coalition, like Steve Bannon. So I say go, Keith, go.
And let's just hope that these smears are coming from the right,
Yes,
not
exactly.
from inside the tent.
Yep, let's hope so.
Yeah, that's all we got for the week.
All right. Well, it's plenty, and I'm going to make a commitment here, which is we're recording on Wednesday. If there's a huge breaking news story, I will post something to our Facebook page, the 0 Hour, and our YouTube page just off my home laptop. So we'll have some commentary on that, too, if something extraordinary happens. Otherwise, when you hear this program, as they used to say on other news broadcasts, this is the 0 hour, but good luck and Godspeed. We'll be right back after this.